Welcome back to Broadscast. So, from the moment her sons were diagnosed with lead paint poisoning, she became a lead poisoning prevention and awareness advocate. Hear how Tamara Rubin has dedicated her life to help her boys and to keep other children from facing the same diagnosis.
Welcome, Tamara.
Hi.
Good morning. How are you?
Okay. Enjoying a sunny Oregon day.
Fabulous.
Really? That's odd in Oregon.
Thank you for joining us. So, give a little backstory of how your children were poisoned by lead paint.
Sure. When we hired a painting contractor, we asked him if he was trained and certified in lead-safe work practices, and he said he was. We made sure he was licensed, bonded, insured, registered with the contractor's board, but we didn't know to check to see his lead paint training certification. This was about 10 years ago, prior to the new legislation that's been passed, and it wasn't as well known. And we just believed that he was trained and certified. And then he went on and used the most dangerous and illegal methods to remove the paint from our historic home, including open flame torch burning of the lead to prep it for painting. And so my baby was 7 months old, and the contractor told us, since we were only working on the outside of the home, that it was safe for us to stay in the home. But the fumes permeated the home, and my babies inhaled them and were instantly poisoned.
Oh my gosh! And so, what did that look like? I mean, when did you first become aware that they had been poisoned?
Yeah, what happened to us is really rare because we had acute exposure. Most often, lead poisoning has no symptoms at all until later developmental stages like ADHD, ADD, autism spectrum symptoms, and such. But because we had acute poisoning, when right away my kids started acting differently. They were holding my 3-year-old was holding his head. He had headaches and was pointing to his eyes because his eyes were hurting him. And both kids were vomiting and had diarrhea and basically had a bunch of flu-like symptoms, so constipation followed by excessive diarrhea for 2 months. And that started right away when the paint removal process started. And we called the doctor pretty much daily find out, what we should do, and they kept saying, "Oh, don't worry, your kids don't have a fever, so just keep them hydrated and they'll be fine." They didn't even suggest that we get them tested for lead paint poisoning because that's not something that people commonly get tested for here in Oregon.
So how long did that process take that you were able to connect that it was the lead paint?
Well, 2 months later, my kids were still sick, and my son woke up in a pool of feces. Always fun. And I said, okay, that's enough. You guys stop telling me not to come into the doctor. So I took him in, and they tested him for absolutely everything, and he came back with lead poisoning. Wow. And then they didn't suggest to test the baby, who was then 9 months old. But I said, wait a second, I want to know why my son is positive. I still didn't think it was from the paint job. I had no idea because I was, didn't understand what that whole thing looked like at that time. And so they tested the baby and called me right away. He had a blood level 16. They said, move out of the house immediately. Your child has lead poisoning.
Oh my gosh. And so you have 4 boys, and the older 2 were not poisoned.
Actually, it's a sandwich. I have an older one who was at summer camp during the repaint job, and then I had another baby after those 2 were born.
Oh, okay.
And because I was fastidiously checking their lead levels throughout the whole process, even though we moved to a newer house, because 92.5% of the homes here in Portland are pre-1978 and have lead hazards, even my baby did test positive because all of my neighbors were renovating.
Oh,
wow.
My
gosh.
So, I mean, this is, I would think, in 2015, right, I mean, you don't have to worry about stuff like that, but clearly that's not the case. I mean, what should people be aware of as far as, like, in their homes and businesses? I mean, what are the laws? What are the rules here?
Well, just because this is a short interview, I want to make sure people know about our website because we have a lot of the information there. That's leadsafeamerica.org, and it's .org, not .com.
Okay.
Excuse me. And the thing that people need to be aware of is that any pre-1978 home can have lead paint hazards. That really, it's 1 in 3 American homes. There's 80 million homes built before 1981 in our country, and it's much more prevalent than people think. And I even got an email this morning from someone in public policy saying, we don't want to scare the parents. We're really careful about that. I'm like, no, okay, no.
Yeah,
Yes, we do.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's the main thing is that for decades since this became legislation, and the lead paint ban, the public policy people have been afraid of creating mass hysteria, and as a result, kids are getting poisoned every day from renovations and soil disturbances and urban living. And the main thing is that right now it's middle and upper income families that are doing renovations and gentrification on older housing that aren't getting tested, that are at highest risk because there's no interventions if you don't do a blood lead test. So the main thing is I recommend all children get blood lead tested regardless of their living situation.
Wow. So we want to keep you on for the next break, next segment, if that's okay, because we still want to talk a little bit more about Lead Safe America and what you're doing there as executive director, and also directing your first documentary. And we definitely want to hear about that. So,
and I think also it would be great if you could share some hidden dangers and some other things. I know you gave us a little bit just now, but some other things to look for as families are making changes to their homes, and what we can look for with our contractors, and some of those tips to make sure that we're all safe.
You're listening to Broadscast on KHTS, your hometown station. Welcome back. We are talking to Tamara Rubin of Lead Safe America. Thanks, Tamara, for staying with us. So, one question: what does lead paint poisoning look like in your children?
So mostly there's no symptoms, and that's the biggest concern. It might look like the flu if they had an acute poisoning with no fever, but generally there's no symptoms, and there's no way to tell if your child's been exposed. And that's why in America the most proactive thing we can do is get blood lead tests on a regular basis. I recommend 9 months and 18 months, so like pre-crawling and post-crawling, and then annually after that, through the teen years, because we have had cases of even teenagers getting poisoned through, for example, hobbies and art projects and different things, and there's no reason to not do a blood test.
Well, how would you treat it when you find out that they are in fact poisoned?
Well, it causes permanent brain damage and causes learning disabilities and behavioral disorders, and in adults it can cause kidney, and liver, and heart dysfunction issues, and so it's very serious, and there are not a lot of treatments, and the main treatment is prevention, so that's why blood lead testing is key. And so if a child tests positive, we always recommend, if possible, that the family move out of the home until the source can be located and remediated. And so you had asked earlier about what to do about it, and the main things are, test your kids, test your home, either with your home inspection prior to purchase, or find out if your landlord has done a lead inspection. In California, they're a little more proactive about that than anywhere else on the planet, so you're lucky there. But in other states, they're not. And then make sure you know what the hazards are, what the potential hazards are, and take care of them when children aren't in the home. And then after any hazards are taken care of, a clearance test needs to be done to make sure there's no dust hazards left. And the main thing about the dust hazards, which is the primary means of children being poisoned, is that it's invisible. It's not dust you can see. It's a sugar packet spread across a football field. So if you had a sugar packet worth of lead dust spread across a football field, that's enough to poison a child.
Wow.
So Tamara, before you became, an advocate, I think that's the thing that people are surprised about when tragedy strikes your family. You have some choices, and you chose to go down this path of advocating for other families so that they, wouldn't follow in your footsteps. What did you see your life this way? Did you have that advocacy gene in you, or is it just something that you just couldn't walk away from?
I've always been an environmental activist. My parents were hippies in the 60s, I was born in 1969. I think it's part of the, role. When I first was a homeowner, I was into historic preservation, and my first home I bought when I was 26 and pregnant. And the very first thing I did before moving in was I had the asbestos removed from the ceiling. It had popcorn ceiling with asbestos, and it had air vents in the ceiling. So I've always been kind of aware of toxicity in homes, but I didn't know that was my calling. And in fact, after my kids were poisoned, I kind of spent 2 years as a victim, kind of really mad that the system was so broken, that the laws weren't enforceable.
Yeah.
And then I decided, okay, I'm going to try and change this paradigm. And I first started by trying to change the laws. And I realized that that's broken,
Yeah.
The whole legislative process. And I said, how else can I address this? And I realized that through being on the Today Show and USA Today and all these other outlets, I realized that the best tool we have in preventing lead exposure and other toxicity issues is telling our stories. So so other
Right.
parents listen.
Right.
So that's why I created Lead Safe America and started working on my film. Because I thought
Misled.
that film was the best way to reach mothers, especially documentary film.
Absolutely.
And if you can reach your target demographic that way, it's compelling, it's emotional, and you're telling a whole bunch of stories of mothers of lead-poisoned children across the country. So somebody's going to resonate. One of those moms in the film resonates with every audience member. So it makes that impact that we wanted to make, and people take it home.
And where are you in the process of releasing the film?
We're in post-production, awaiting that last $100,000 donation. It's been kind of crazy, but I do everything in challenging ways. And so what we decided was the film is a project of the nonprofit, Let's Save America, and we've got over 900 people have donated something to make the film possible.
Wow.
And that includes Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey of The Who are donating music.
Wow.
And, Noam Chomsky's in the film, and the band Fish, John Fishman, the drummer, and his wife, Briar, are producers of the film. Peter Coyote has offered to donate narration. So it's a real team project, and we just need to do, picture finishing, sound finishing, some final editing.
Were you surprised at how many people came to support you and to be on your team throughout this process? I mean, did you think it was going to be isolating, or are you shocked to have so many people be in your corner?
I'm shocked and thrilled and so happy. And, my editor said, there's no way Pete and Roger are going to donate Behind Blue Eyes to your film. They've never done that before. And then they said, of course we'll donate it. You have perpetual lifetime rights to Behind Blue Eyes for your film.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, my God. And it turns out that Roger's family, when he was a kid, worked in the docks in England and did, boat painting, which was lead paint, and they had lead exposure.
Wow. And so how can people help you, Tamara?
How can they help me? They can, if they have money, they can donate it because we're a nonprofit, 501c3. It's tax deductible, and we appreciate that. And we also, give direct support to families whose kids have been poisoned. And we provide free lead paint test kits to families all over the country. We distributed 16,000 last year. If they don't have money, they can like our Facebook page for the film, which has over 8,500 likes right now. It's facebook.com/misledmovie. And also watch the trailer to the film and share it with their friends, because we created the trailer as a really quick, easy tool for people to share about the message. And then finally, if they would like to test the paint in their home, we do give away free lead paint test kits, and there's a form on the website on the top menu bar that says, request a free test kit, and they can do that.
Right. Well, before we go, because we have about 1 minute before we have to go to break, you're talking about homes that were built before 1978?
Yeah.
Okay, so people who have homes that are newer than 1978, do you not have this problem, or should they be equally as cautious?
They need to be concerned about their water delivery methods, because under the Bush administration, water supply pipes that were up to 8% lead were able to be marked lead-free.
Oh, wow.
And that just changed this year. That was just changed this year. So if you have they get your water tested.
And what about toys? Is that still a concern?
Toys is not as a concern. On the website, on our Facebook page, I do X-ray fluorescence testing of household goods, and that's one of the most popular things I do. And I test, your grandmother's antique Pyrex, bowls have like 200,000 parts per million lead, which is really, really toxic. And, I'm more concerned about antiques, antique jewelry, costume jewelry, than I am about current modern toys, which are all very carefully regulated.
Right. Even when they come over from other countries, do they have the same regulations?
The recalls make big splashes in the news, but they're really rare comparably.
Okay.
You're like Mythbusters.
I know, right?
For lead paint poisoning. I love it.
Yeah, Mythbusters. Those guys probably have lead poisoning. We've watched all of their episodes, and they use lead and they melt lead. They put their hands in melted lead.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you guys nuts?
I think that one of the things that we are so appreciative for what you're doing is educating and knowing where your strength and your attention should be focused. So thank you so much for being a pioneer in this and for taking your tragedy and doing something great with it, so the rest of us can feel safe. So
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Tamara Rubin of leadsafeamerica.org. Thanks, Tamara.
Thank you both.
Coming up, she was abducted by a family friend at the age of 9 and held captive for 17 days in a concrete bunker. We talk with New York Times bestselling author Katie Beers.
Stay tuned. You're listening to Broadscast on KHTS, your hometown station.